just be a little quiet while we get started here. Thank you again for everybody coming today. Today we've got the pleasure of having Adam Carroll here to talk to everybody about car buying and those tricks and traps involved in that. I'm sure what is everybody's favorite pastime is shopping for cars. So just a little bit about Adam. He's the founder of the National Financial Educators, and he's also co-author of the book Winning the Money Game and You Don't Know Me from Adam. So take a look at those. He speaks across the country, nationwide. He's been heard by over 150,000 people across the country in different lectures and settings and things. So he's got a huge background, and we're really happy to have him here and talking to everybody today. So everybody, Adam Carroll.
Thank you, I appreciate it, Ben. Thanks to everyone. Oh, please hold that till the end. You don't know how bad it is. First of all, it's an honor to be here. We have about 120 minutes worth of content to go through, so hopefully that's all right. I'm just kidding. I'm going to go for maybe 30, 35 minutes, and if there are questions or anything at the end, we'll certainly answer. I know we have two car buying experts back here, right? We're also going to chime in.
Well, we don't know if we're experts.
I'm expert here. I don't know about you.
Okay, good. At any rate, Kyle and Doug, I assume Doug, right?
Yes.
Both work for Capital View, and Doug was in the car business, so anything that I am wrong about, just tell me afterwards so it doesn't make me look foolish while I'm up here. My background, I would consider myself a champion of the consumer. And part of the reason for that is I went to college for communication and got out and realized that I was kind of unemployable with that degree. But I got out and was also in significant amount of debt. I had $28,000 in student loans, $8,000 in credit card debt. I was upside down in my car. My dog had just died at home. My girl had left me at school. I sounded like a country western song. But I started reading books on personal finance because I realized the one thing that I probably should have learned in college was how to manage my money better. So over the course of 2 or 3 years, I read about 120 books on personal finance, everything from how to buy cars to how to buy homes to investing in the market and everything else. And my wife and I, we decided to live on one income for the first 2 years of our marriage. And so we lived on her income, and my income we used to blast away all of our debt. So by the time we were 26, we had no student loans, no car loans, no credit cards. All we had was a mortgage. And I went out and started teaching that on college campuses all across the country. So my goal is really to teach people how to build a bigger life, not a bigger lifestyle. And building a bigger life means you decrease the amount of debt you're carrying, you're buying things a little bit more intelligently, and that's what we're going to talk about today with car buying tricks and traps. My background right now, I'm with the Iowa Credit Union Foundation, and the foundation is a nonprofit arm of the Iowa Credit Union League, which is the league basically represents all of the credit unions in the state of Iowa, and the foundation is a nonprofit arm whose mission is to decrease poverty and to increase the financial education and awareness among consumers in the state through credit unions. So I consult with the foundation, but through that relationship, credit unions like Capital View allow me to come in and do programs like this Lunch and Learn. So I appreciate you all showing an interest in being here. Without further ado, here's the big debate in car buying. Do you lease or do you buy? Any rules of thumb or philosophies here from any of you?
Buy.
What do you think? Buy. Why?
Because we drive our car until it can't be driven anymore.
Okay, good. So you are a buy it and drive it until the wheels fall off kind of family. Is that right?
Yeah.
Good. All right. Anyone else have a philosophy around buying or leasing?
Well, I go with the buy because I know that mileage on leasing is less than I drive.
Okay, good.
And like she says, I keep them till they fall apart.
And this is probably a little bit more savvy group than maybe some of the groups that I've spoken to before, but most people when they see the lease commercials, you can lease a Honda Civic for $99 a month. I mean, when I think about that logically, $99 a month to drive a car for essentially 3 years, maybe a 48-month lease, but it's probably $3,500 due at signing, which is in very fine print down at the bottom of those commercials. What attracts people to those deals, if you will, is the monthly amount. So $99, $139, $179 a month. People go, I can afford that. They don't always read the fine print that says, well, first you have to come to the table with a certain amount of money. You've got to be qualified credit-wise. You're limited to 10,000 or 12,000 miles a year, and anything over and above that, you're probably going to get charged 50 cents a mile or whatever the number is. At the end of your lease, there's something called the residual value. And the residual value of the car is what is the value of the car left over after you've leased it for 3 years. And they use that in factoring, all sorts of different things in terms of how to get you out of your lease, how to get into the next car, and so on and so forth. Doug, you probably go into great depth about that, right?
Yes.
Yes. Anything I missed on residual value or leasing?
No, I mean, you're right. The residual value is very, very important, and it does matter what your driving habits are. And it certainly matters if you're going to keep the car or if you like a new car every 3 years or whatever the case might be. So all those things come into play.
Right. So the bottom line of that is there's a whole lot of variables when you go to either buy or lease. And if you're leasing, make sure you understand how you're negotiating the lease, because that's really critical to get the most value and the most bang for your buck. From a buying perspective, what I'm going to talk about here is when you're buying a car, some of the things to keep in mind. And there's really 4 tricks or traps, 4 traps, if you will, and then I'm going to give you the tricks out of them, but 4 traps to keep in mind. Now, here's what I would ask yourself in your mind, answer this question. Are you someone that says, I will always have a car payment no matter what? And if you are, understand that that's how you're going to operate, and you'll probably trade your vehicles in and trade up and however you decide to do that. I personally am a person who said, I want as few payments as possible every single month. My goal was to have a mortgage payment, maybe a couple others, and that's it. Part of it is I just don't like writing checks. And then they came up with online bill pay. It was the most magical thing ever. And we use that. But as far as buying goes, some of the things I'm going to talk about are how to get to a point where you have no car payment. That was kind of our goal. The first thing is you got to know your budget and stick to it. Ideally, this is sort of the general rule of thumb. Car payment should be no more than 4 to 6% of your gross income. So 4 to 6% of your gross income, meaning if you make $50,000 a year, you would spend up to $3,000 a year on car payments or $250 a month. That would be 6%. That would sort of be at the peak of what those car payments should be. The percentages, someone could say, where do you get these? It's basically studies that have been done of consumers over the past 2 decades as to those that have a certain amount of savings at the end of their working career or when they're 35 or 45. How much did they spend on certain things like housing, vehicle, insurance, healthcare, all of that? So 4 to 6% is sort of the general rule of thumb, meaning $250 a month. Now, some of you may have gone in to a car dealership when you're shopping for a car and just said, I want this car, I want all the amenities and luxuries in it. I know that I can afford $300 a month, right? And that's the best way to do it, right, Kyle?
The worst way to do it.
Okay. So we'll talk about how to do that. But the real deal is if you know your budget and you're sticking to whatever your car payment is, then you may not be talked into some of the other extras that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But know your budget and stick to it. Understand that what 4 to 6% of your gross income is and what that translates to on a monthly basis. So trap number 1 is dealership financing. Now we have, Kyle is the auto loan guy for Capital View. Doug had been in the car business, so understands all this, and I'm trying not to be offensive.
No, not at all.
Okay, good.
I'm no longer selling cars.
Okay, good. So I used to do some work with the F&I guys, which are the financing and insurance guys at a dealership. And the F&I office is really, from what I understand, that's really where a lot of car dealerships make their money. Right? Because what they're doing is they're upselling and they're adding to, and you've already, to understand the psychology of when you're buying a car, you've already made the decision to get the car. So your defenses are sort of let down because you've been negotiating with the salesperson, for the last 6 hours or whatever it might have been. And now that your defenses are down, you're okay, that's good. All right, we made a decision, this is the bottom line. Let's go into the F&I person and we'll get your financing all lined up. Because your defenses are down, we can start kind of adding to the cart, so to speak, and saying, well, you actually probably should look at this, and have you thought about this, and you might need an extended warranty, and gap coverage is certainly important. So we'll talk about all those things. Here are the tricks. When it's time to talk to the finance manager, this is what you have to understand. They do this for a living. They know their numbers inside and out. They can tell you what X% versus Y% is going to be on a car payment. They know exactly how much it's going to take to get you to the payment that you need based on the number of years that you finance that vehicle, the amortization schedule. In doing this, and some of this has changed over time, so I would like to think that the credit bureaus have gotten better about this. But if you go shopping for, let's say you're shopping 1 week, you're looking at cars, and you find 3 that you're relatively interested in, and you go and you start talking to them, and they say, well, let us at least run your credit and see what kind of deal we can get you. What happens is that credit is pulled then because one dealership might send it out through their system, and all of these finance agencies are going to pull their own credit bureau, see what your score is, and then come back with whatever deal they can offer you. So the more dings you have in a short period of time on your credit, it's actually going to be detrimental to your credit score. And so I would be real careful about allowing someone to go out and pull your credit numerous times. Okay? You will pay a higher percentage. This is kind of painting with a broad brush, but generally speaking at car dealerships, you're going to pay a higher percentage than you would if you went to Kyle or Doug here at the credit union, got qualified beforehand for whatever amount of money you were wanting to borrow. You would know what your payment is up front, and then when you go negotiate for the car, you know exactly what you have because you've already done all the work ahead of time. So some folks will put the cart before the horse. I would recommend get qualified and get approved for your loan prior to going out and shopping for your car. It's the smartest thing you could possibly do. Because when it's time to talk to the finance manager, they have very few arrows in their quiver when you say, I already actually have my financing all wrapped up. And I got it at 2.9% or whatever the number is. Right?
What if you can pay cash for the car?
Should you? Is that the question?
Both?
Okay. I'll be curious to get your guys' impression on that.
I've purchased both ways where I just walked in with cash and there you go. Depending on the type of vehicle you're buying, if you're buying something that's fairly low cost, they're going to love you for doing it because they don't want to try and find a way to finance a 20-year-old car with 50,000 miles. Unless the buy here, pay here, and you don't want to do that anyway. But most of the time, I kind of wouldn't bring up the whole you're going to pay with cash right away just to see what they're going to work with you on because they're going to try and think in their head that we want to try and get you the best possible deal because they're going to make it up on the interest rate and the extra payments later. So once you get down to a price and you be like, okay, great. And just main thing with shopping is, especially when paying cash, they're going to want to talk payments all the time. When you're paying cash, you don't care about payments because you've got money in hand.
Because like, we had a car, I don't carry around a lot of cash, we had a car accident and they totaled the car and so they gave you this lump to go, and they know they've got you because you have to have a vehicle.
Right.
So we had the cash, pretty much pay almost the whole thing.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And kind of piggybacking on that, what if they offered a 0% when you were ready to pay cash?
Right. There's a time value of money. I mean, that's the other question of do you pay cash or do you finance? There's a time value of money. If you have, and let's just pull a number, let's say it's $10,000. Well, $10,000 invested in something that might earn you, 3 or 4%, versus having a 0% financing deal for 4 years, you may be better off doing financing if you can swing the payments and care to. Again, from my perspective, and I tend to be a no loan guy. I like buying cars with cash, but I don't bring it up until the very end, as Kyle was alluding to, because as they're negotiating, they're thinking in their head, well, we're going to make an extra $500 or $300 or $1,000 on the gap insurance and the extended warranty and whatever else it might be. So if I'm not bringing those things up, and we could talk payments all day long, and I could tell them, no, I want, and throw some arbitrary number at them, knowing in the back of your mind you're going to pay cash.
And we ended up getting 0% at a bigger payment. He said, why, if it's a 0% loan, why don't you make your payment bigger and then keep a hold of your money? So that's what we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's logic behind that. I think the real key of all this is